You ever have one of those moments where life feels perfect? Quiet streets, friendly neighbors, the kind of place you imagine raising a family or finally catching your breath after years of work. And then it all unravels so fast you wonder if you've been living in somebody else's chess game the whole time. That was me 2 years ago when I moved to Maplewood Crest. I thought I'd found suburban paradise. A calm, tree-lined neighborhood where folks waved when you passed, kids biked in the cul-de-sacs, and the realtor swore up and down that the homeowners association kept everything running smooth. For the first few months, it did feel like paradise. My wife, Emily, and I would sit on the porch in the evenings, sipping wine, watching the sun dip behind the old oak trees. I was 45 then, a retired civil engineer, and for the first time in decades, I thought maybe I'd put the chaos of my career behind me. But you know how sometimes you can't quite turn off the part of your brain that notices problems? That was me with the floods. Every spring, the creek behind our street swelled up like clockwork, turning driveways into rivers and garages into swimming pools. The neighbors laughed it off. Just Maplewood's little Venice, they'd say, but I couldn't laugh. I'd spent 20 years designing flood control systems for cities, and the problem here was obvious. The HOA had been ignoring it, handing out cheerful reminders about flood insurance like that was some kind of solution. Watching families haul out soaked carpet and ruined furniture every year made me sick. So one spring I snapped. I put my expertise and a big chunk of my savings into building a proper flood system. Automated gates, retention ponds, the whole package. It worked. The next storm came, dumped 8 inches of rain in a single night, and for the first time in neighborhood history, the streets stayed dry. 30 homes saved, cars intact, basements bone dry. Neighbors brought cookies, shook my hand, called me a hero. For 2 weeks, I felt like I'd really made a difference. Then came the letter. A thick envelope, official-looking seals, and county codes splashed across the page. Violation notice. $250,000 fine for unauthorized hydraulic modifications. My hands shook as I read it. 250 grand. For stopping floods? Emily dropped her coffee mug when I showed her. We sat there in silence, staring at the numbers that might bankrupt us. The next day, the HOA president, a woman named Margaret Harlan, showed up at my door with this polished smile plastered on her face. "I'm so sorry, Ben," she said, wringing her hands like she practiced in front of a mirror, "but my hands are tied. The board is forcing me to enforce environmental codes." She played the part of sympathetic leader perfectly, but I noticed, just for a flicker, her mask slipped. Behind the smile was calculation, and maybe even hatred. That's when things started getting strange. Anonymous notes appeared in my mailbox. No return address, just block letters. The documents are fake. Margaret isn't who she seems. Watch her closely. You're not alone. My pulse jumped every time one showed up. Someone inside the HOA was feeding me information, but I didn't know who or why. The consultants started arriving. First, a supposed environmental expert, talking in jargon so dense most neighbors would have believed every word. But something about her story didn't add up, and sure enough, another anonymous note told me she wasn't real, her credentials stolen from scientists across the country. Then I noticed the car, a dark sedan with tinted windows parked across the street day after day. Sometimes a man in a ball cap, sometimes a woman with blonde hair. Always the same plate. Watching my house. Margaret didn't just want me fined. She was running surveillance like this was some crime thriller. It all came crashing together when another neighbor, quiet little Anna from 3 doors down, knocked on my door. She was the HOA secretary, clutching a folder like it was a life vest. "Ben, what Margaret's doing isn't right," she whispered, eyes darting over her shoulder. She showed me minutes from board meetings. Margaret had granted herself emergency authority without approval. She hinted at shady property deals, whispered words like development opportunities. At first I thought Anna was my guardian angel, until another anonymous note arrived. "Be careful who you trust. Anna has access, but also an agenda." My gut twisted. Was she helping me or setting me up? The storm that changed everything was Hurricane Diana. The forecast showed it bearing straight down on us, 3 weeks out. And suddenly the timing of everything made sense. Margaret wasn't fining me because she cared about regulations. She wanted my dam gone before the hurricane hit. No flood protection, plus a storm of the decade, equals homes underwater and property values in the gutter. Developers swoop in, buy up ruined houses for pennies. And guess who cashes the commission checks? It wasn't about rules. It wasn't even about money anymore. It was personal. Years ago, I'd written an environmental report that killed a luxury condo project in the next county, 47 units on protected wetlands. The lead realtor on that deal? Margaret Harlan. My report cost her 80 grand in commissions and her reputation with big developers. She'd been stewing for 3 years, waiting for the perfect revenge. And she'd steered me, manipulated realtors, bent deals to move right in her neighborhood. I hadn't stumbled into a dream home. I'd walked straight into her trap. The night before Diana made landfall, Margaret got her wish. County crews, cameras rolling tore down my flood barriers. She gave interviews about reckless individuals endangering communities while smirking for the news. And I stood there, filming with the gear Anna had slipped me, knowing we were about to see her plan implode. Because here's the kicker. Anna wasn't just nervous little Anna. She'd been the anonymous voice all along. She admitted it finally, face hard, eyes burning. Margaret had destroyed her sister's life with the same harassment years earlier. 12 bogus violations until her family broke, lost their house, their savings, everything. Anna had spent 18 months pretending loyalty to Margaret, gathering evidence. Dozens of recordings, financial records, bribes, every ugly detail. And she'd been waiting for Margaret's arrogance to give her the perfect stage. Hurricane Diana slammed us with 95-mile winds and 8 inches of rain in hours. With my dam gone, the creek surged. I watched from my second floor as water swallowed lawns, driveways, first floors. Neighbors called me, panicked, begging for help. My gut wrenched, knowing I could have saved them, but Anna's words echoed, temporary damage to expose permanent evil. And then came the twist of poetic justice. The developers Margaret partnered with, Meridian Construction, had staged their shiny equipment right near the floodplain. Excavators, trailers, materials worth nearly $1 million, all swallowed under 6 feet of muddy water. Gone in a single afternoon. Margaret's payday drowned before it ever began. That night, with the storm still raging, news stations broke the story wide open. Anna dropped her evidence like a bomb. Audio of Margaret bragging about ruining families. Bank records showing she paid off inspectors. Even recordings of her mocking neighbors she'd driven into bankruptcy. The headline blared. HOA president's revenge scheme floods own neighborhood. Neighbors who once doubted me now saw the truth. Outrage swept the community. Emergency meetings were called. Margaret's empire of fear and fines collapsed overnight. And me? I stood there, watching the water recede, torn between satisfaction and guilt. I'd save my name, maybe even save the community long term, but at the cost of watching people I cared about suffer through flooding that never should have happened. So here I am, telling you this story not as some victory speech, but as a man still wondering if patience and exposure were worth the price. Because justice doesn't come clean, it comes muddy, complicated, and soaked through with consequences. What do you think? Was it right to let Margaret's plan play out so she could be destroyed by her own scheme, even if it meant innocent families paid the price along the way? Or should I have fought harder to keep that dam standing, no matter what? Drop a comment, tell me what you'd have done in my shoes, and if you've ever gone head-to-head with an HOA or someone holding power over your community, share your story. Because maybe the rest of us can learn before we find ourselves living next to an enemy who's been plotting revenge for years without us even knowing.